Welcome to the deep dive. Today, while we're tackling a really critical international situation,
Absolutely. It's been front and center, hasn't it?
it really has. We're pulling directly from the headlines today, and the main one we need to focus on. Ceasefire declared between India and Pakistan after days of intense clashes.
That's the banner headline, yes. A huge development.
Huge. After 4 incredibly tense days, we saw these two nuclear-armed neighbors really go at it. Cross-border conflict that pushed things, well, very close to the edge.
Right to the precipice. And the initial trigger for this latest round was that terrible incident back on April 22nd.
Uh-huh. The killing of 26 civilians in India's Jammu and Kashmir region.
Exactly. A horrific event that, predictably led to a rapid escalation.
It did. India responded on May 7th, launching strikes quite deep inside Pakistan.
Which, in that kind of volatile environment, was almost bound to provoke a response.
And it did. Pakistan retaliated quickly, hitting Indian military sites. And that exchange, well, it marked a really dangerous turn.
Definitely. And the reports coming out during that time. Downed jets, casualties on both sides, military personnel, civilians too.
Yeah, just a deeply alarming picture.
And it seems it took U.S. intervention to pull things back from the brug after things escalated further, with drones and missiles involved.
Right. That seemed to be a key moment.
Yes. The U.S. mediated, and that's what led to the ceasefire that's, well, currently in place.
So our mission here today in this deep dive is pretty clear. We need to unpack these headlines, understand the sequence, the actions taken, the state of this ceasefire, and, crucially, those underlying tensions that just don't seem to go away.
Let's get into it.
Okay, first up, the ceasefire itself and the immediate aftermath. Headline 1 confirms its holding, technically, after those 4 days. But
There's always a but, isn't there?
seems so. Both sides are already accusing each other of violations.
Yeah, that's almost textbook for these situations, unfortunately. A sign of just how fragile things are. Deep suspicion on both sides.
India's statements, they're really emphasizing the destruction of alleged terrorist camps inside Pakistan.
That's their narrative. Pakistan, meanwhile, is talking about the catastrophic potential of all-out war, mutually assured destruction.
Highlighting the nuclear aspect.
Exactly. Underscoring the stakes involved for everyone.
And the U.S. role in brokering this, particularly after the drone and missile phase, that suggests serious international concern, right? That this could spiral completely out of control.
Absolutely. It signals that alarm bells were ringing, not just regionally, but globally.
But even with the fighting paused, those core issues, Kashmir, water sharing, they're still there, untouched, really.
Completely. These are deep, decades-old problems. They're the constant fuel for the fire.
So for you listening, the takeaway here is, yes, there's a ceasefire, but the situation is incredibly precarious. The core tensions haven't gone anywhere.
It's a pause, not necessarily peace.
Right. Okay, let's move to headlines 2 and 3. These give us more detail on the military actions, the sort of blow-by-blow.
Understanding the sequence here is vital. It starts, as we said, with that April 22nd attack. India quickly blamed Pakistan-backed militants.
And then came India's response. Operation Sindoor. Initially targeting 9 specific sites they called terror facilities.
Correct. But it didn't stop there. After Pakistan reportedly made incursions, used drones, missiles, India expanded its targets.
To include Pakistani military bases?
Yeah.
And this is where that strike on the Rahim Yar Khan Air Base comes in.
Yes, that's a key development highlighted in the headlines. In Pakistan's Punjab province.
And the report suggested significant damage. The main runway, possibly out of action for a week or more.
That's what was reported. And it seems to be corroborated, at least partially, by a NOTAM, and Notice to Airmen from Pakistan's own Civil Aviation Authority.
Mentioning work in progress at the airfield.
Right. Plus, India officials apparently released satellite images claiming to show the damage. This points to a, pretty significant escalation in the type of targets hit.
And inevitably, casualties resulted from these exchanges. Downed aircraft, soldiers killed, civilians caught in the middle. Headlines 2 and 3 mention figures around, 35 to 40 Pakistani soldiers lost.
Those are reported figures, yes. But it's crucial to remember the different narratives. India insists on precision strikes against militant infrastructure only.
While Pakistan describes it more as mutually destructive warfare, emphasizing the risks for both sides.
Exactly. Two very different interpretations of the same events.
And it was this fear, this mutual destruction aspect that likely pushed the U.S. to step in and mediate the ceasefire. But again, the root causes, especially Kashmir, that remains the powder keg.
Always Kashmir. It looms over everything.
So for you trying to piece this together, attack, retaliation, Operation Sindoor, escalation to military bases, key strikes like Rahim Khan, casualties, international alarm, then ceasefire. That's the basic chain.
A dangerous chain, rooted in decades of history.
Let's look at headline 5 now. Focusing on the U.S. brokered ceasefire specifically, and, importantly, those alleged violations that cropped up almost immediately.
Right, this really highlights the fragility we're talking about. The ceasefire is announced Saturday, but within hours.
Explosions, artillery fire reported in border towns.
Yeah, the fighting didn't just switch off instantly. And predictably, the blame game started right away.
India blaming Pakistan for starting it up again, Pakistan denying it and pointing the finger back at India.
Standard procedure, almost. Now, the U.S. involvement is interesting. Reports mention Secretary of State Marco Rubio and even former President Trump.
Trump? How did he get involved?
Well, we'll get to that in a bit more detail later, but yes, involved in the mediation efforts. And apparently part of the deal is a commitment for talks.
Talks on the bigger issues, at a neutral venue.
That's the reported agreement, which, in principle sounds positive, a commitment to dialogue.
But on the ground, for people living there, it's relief mixed with fear, right? The sporadic violence, the deep distrust. It makes the truce feel shaky.
Incredibly shaky. And you have to remember the history. Multiple wars fought over Kashmir. Both sides have deeply entrenched positions.
So the key point here, U.S. intervention stopped the worst of the fighting for now, but the underlying Kashmir issue means this ceasefire is on thin ice. It's not a peace deal.
Not by a long shot. It's a temporary halt.
Okay, headlines 6 and 8 give us more on India's perspective, their justifications, and some more military specifics.
Right, so India claims its strikes hit 9 sites, eliminated around 100 terrorists. That's a very specific claim.
A claim Pakistan flatly denies, calling the strikes unprovoked aggression and repeating they don't harbor terrorists. A complete clash of narratives.
Fundamentally opposed views. And these headlines also confirm the conflict spread beyond Kashmir. Drones, missiles hitting deeper targets.
Military bases, infrastructure, Rahim Khan again, but also Chaklas Nurkan Air Base mentioned, strategic targets.
Definitely. India justifies all this as self-defense. They claim their artillery killed those 35 to 40 Pakistani personnel we mentioned. And sadly, civilian casualties are reported on both sides.
The language India is using is interesting too, calling it an understanding, not a formal ceasefire.
Yeah, and trying to separate their counter-terror ops from the wider India-Pakistan conflict. It's very deliberate phrasing.
Diplomatic maneuvering. And on the U.S. offer to mediate on Kashmir itself.
India is sticking to its long-held position.
Well,
bilateral talks only. No third-party involvement on Kashmir. That complicates things.
Headline 8 adds more context here. A reported warning from U.S. VP J.D. Vance to PM Modi about escalation risks.
Yes, and apparently Modi gave quite an assertive response, vowing a harder, deeper, and bigger reaction if provoked further.
That really shows the mood just before the strikes, and Pakistan reportedly hit 26 locations in India. This was widespread.
It really was. Headline 8 also outlines India's apparent strategy: political, military, psychological.
Political, like suspending the Indus Waters Treaty? That's huge.
A major step. Militarily, the careful target selection, including alleged terrorist HQs, and psychologically, demonstrating the reach to hit symbolic targets deep inside Pakistan.
And even with the understanding, India's signaling they're ready for more if needed, demanding consequences for cross-border terror, demanding Pakistan vacate Pak.
And notably, downplaying the U.S. role in the ceasefire itself. They don't want to portray it as the U.S. saving the day.
So for you listening, India's position comes across as feeling justified, resolute on counterterrorism, and wary of external meddling, especially on Kashmir.
A very firm stance.
Okay, headline 7 zooms in on the U.S. role again, but specifically the rather unusual announcement and the differing reactions.
Right. This focuses on former President Trump announcing the ceasefire on Truth Social. Full and immediate ceasefire.
Which apparently came as a surprise to Indian officials. They weren't consulted beforehand.
That's the report, leading to frustration in New Delhi. A feeling of being sidelined, perhaps, in the announcement process. It raises questions about how coordinated the diplomacy actually was.
But Pakistan's reaction was different.
Reportedly, yes. They welcomed it, saw it perhaps as a diplomatic win, getting the U.S. involved in stopping the Indian strikes.
So one side frustrated, the other welcoming. That itself shows the underlying tension, doesn't it? Even in the moment of de-escalation.
Absolutely. And again, it all comes back to Kashmir, that core dispute fueling the volatility.
So the way the U.S., particularly Trump, got involved adds another layer of, well, complexity and perhaps instability. Analysts are questioning if a ceasefire announced like this can really hold.
It certainly raises doubts. It suggests that deeper, more conventional diplomatic work is needed for anything lasting. The contrast in reactions, India's frustration, Pakistan's welcome, shows just how fragile it all is.
It really highlights the unpredictable nature of diplomacy sometimes. Okay, let's shift focus now with headline 9 to the human impact on the ground in Kashmir.
Yes, this is crucial context. It focuses on the Uriya subdivision right along the line of control. This area bore the brunt of the recent fighting, the shelling, drones, cross-border fire.
And the result? Mass displacement. Hundreds fleeing their homes, now living in temporary shelters.
And even now, with the ceasefire, it's not safe to go back yet. Security forces are still clearing unexploded bombs and shells.
Police are advising people to stay away. Bomb disposal teams are working, but it could take days.
It's a painstaking, dangerous process. And the scale is significant, around 15,000 people displaced just in that Uri area, seeking refuge in relief camps.
People want to go home, naturally. But reports say even those who tried were told to leave again. The danger is still real.
We also hear about former Chief Minister Mahbooba Mufti visiting shelters, promising support, advocating for housing and compensation.
And those personal stories, like the woman from Islamabad describing her escape from the shelling, they really bring home the human cost.
Absolutely. These residents are just waiting for the all-clear, hoping for peace. Mufti's comment about Kashmiri children wanting peace, not revenge. That's powerful.
It really grounds the conflict. For you listening, this shows the immediate, devastating impact these tensions have on ordinary lives.
Beyond the geopolitics, it's about people's safety and homes.
Now, for something seemingly different but directly connected. Headline 4, the impact on international cricket.
Yeah, it shows how wide the ripple effect can be. New Zealand cricketers caught up in this. Mitchell Santner and Bevan John Jacobs are apparently still in India.
Even though they want to go home, why are they still there?
Because their IPL team, the Mumbai Indians, is hoping the tournament might actually resume soon. Most other Kiwi players left India already.
Players like Devon Conway, Trent Boult, they went home.
Right. And it wasn't just the IPL. 9 New Zealand players involved in the Pakistan Super League also had to come home early. That tournament got relocated, then postponed indefinitely because of the conflict.
Big names too, Kane Williamson, Tim Seifert.
Exactly. It shows major disruption to the international sports calendar. The Players Association is in touch with Santner and Jacobs, offering support.
But their departure depends on the IPL organizers and team owners, basically.
Pretty much. It's uncertain. So this headline really highlights how geopolitical crises can disrupt lives and careers in unexpected ways, even in the world of sport.
A reminder that these conflicts have far-reaching consequences. Okay, finally, let's look at headline 12, the economic fallout, specifically on India's hospitality industry.
Yes, another ripple effect, showing the broader economic damage. The numbers are pretty stark. Over 50% cancellation rates in hotels in major cities like Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai.
Mostly due to companies issuing travel advisories restricting employee travel.
Exactly. And they're projecting a 40% slump in business for May because new bookings have dried up too. International tourism hit hard.
The report mentions specific hotel chains facing big losses. IHCL, the Taj brand, potentially losing 1.5 crore daily in EBIT. Ventive Hospitality, maybe 50 lakh daily.
Those are significant numbers. And it's not just tourism. Corporate travel is down too. Big companies like HDFC Bank, Axis Bank, Tata Communications restricting staff travel.
And the IPL suspension didn't help either, I suppose. Teams and commentators staying in high-end hotels.
Right. That's another revenue stream that suddenly vanished for those hotels. So they're cutting costs, hiring freezes, trying to save on electricity by managing occupancy.
Industry leaders are just watching and waiting. Meetings, conferences being rescheduled.
It paints a picture of a major industry under significant financial strain, just hoping for stability to return. So for you listening, this demonstrates clearly the economic impact spreads far beyond the border regions.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, what have we seen? A fragile ceasefire after intense clashes, significant military actions from both India and Pakistan with very different narratives, a key U.S. role in mediation, but with mixed reactions.
We've seen the devastating human cost in Kashmir, with thousands displaced, and we've seen the wider impacts, disrupting everything from international cricket to India's hospitality sector.
It's a complex picture, and crucially, as we've stressed, the underlying issues, especially Kashmir, are still unresolved. The risk of this flaring up again remains very real.
Absolutely. The ceasefire is welcome, but it's far from a permanent solution.
Which brings us to our final thought for you today. Considering this deep-rooted conflict, the complex history, the differing viewpoints we've discussed, what are the realistic paths to a lasting peace here? Is external mediation, like we saw with the U.S., the answer long-term? Or does the real progress have to come somehow from direct bilateral talks between India and Pakistan themselves?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Something to
Okay.
definitely reflect on.